evening's meeting of Thurrock Council's Cabinet. My name is John Kent and I chair Cabinet. Can I just start by reminding everyone present this evening that the meeting is being live streamed and recorded for publication on the Council's website. Item 1 is apologies for absence. Rhiannon, do we have any apologies?
No apologies.
Thank you. Item 2, minutes. Can I move that the minutes of the Cabinet meeting of the 12th of February and the meeting of the 24th of February 2025 to be approved as a correct record? Cabinet, is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Moving on to item 3. I've not agreed to any items of business, but can I just confirm at this stage that all 49 members have been invited to this evening's meeting as we are considering the two really important issues of devolution and local government reorganisation. The reason we're doing it this way, of course, is that these decisions are executive decisions, they're not council decisions, so we have to have the decision made by Cabinet, by portfolio holders, but in the spirit of being as open and transparent as we can, we think it's right that we hear the views of members across the chamber before we make the decision. So I am under Procedure Rules 2.21 to 2.23, Chapter 3, Part 2 of the Constitution, using my power to decide who speaks at a Cabinet meeting and for how long. So for this evening, I will allow any non-executive member to speak for 4 minutes. I'm going to move on with the rest of the agenda before we come back to that. So item 4, does anyone have any declaration of interest? None, thank you. Item 5, statements of the leader. I have no statements this evening. Item 6, briefings on policy, budget and other issues. We do have a briefing note on the waste policy, which has come from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee that we'll consider alongside item 15 when we get there. Item 7, no petitions have been submitted. And item 8, I'm not aware of any questions submitted by non-executive members. Item 9, I'm not aware of any matters referred to Cabinet for consideration by an Overview and Scrutiny Committee, save for the waste policy briefing note that I've already mentioned. Item 10, delegated decisions taken since last meeting. A list of the 3 delegated decisions is on the agenda for everybody's delectation and delight. So we move on to item 11, which is Greater Essex devolution consultation. Can I just say that this is something that we've never done before. I think we moved to a cabinet system in Thurrock in the year 2000, and I think in 25 years it's the first time we've tried something like this, so I hope everybody enters into the spirit of what we're trying to do. We are trying to be as open and inclusive as we can. Not done it before, so it's going to be a little bit of trial and error. So what I propose to do is, on the first item, Greater Essex devolution, is I will invite contributions from non-executive members. When contributions have been made, I will give time for questions. I will then close the meeting to non-executive members and move to the executive to debate the issue and make the decision, and then we'll move on to the next item and repeat the process. I'll start by inviting Councillor Coxshall to make any contribution that he wishes.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you for opening up the Cabinet meeting this evening for non-executive members to actually contribute to some of the most important decisions this Council will probably make before we decide to wrap it up. In terms of the devolution paper, I think it's really important to say that devolution is something that is coming down the line. It is a great opportunity for Thurrock, and I think that's something we both agree on, both sides of this chamber. Particularly, I think I'm quite happy to see, I think everyone's accepted it's happening, it's coming down the track very quickly. I think for Thurrock though, it's just making sure we get the best deal into this devolution deal. I'm very mindful of the opportunities that we can get out of skills from strategic transport links that we can start to actually have and spatial planning. I think there's an opportunity here that actually comes out of the Mayor's office. I think it's just we need to be ambitious. We've got fantastic ports in Thurrock. We are a net contributor to the business rates pool. We want to make sure that we actually leverage and make use of what the combined authority will be doing. I think that's really important to do. I don't want to see our opportunities that we have with the free port have with it being here, as well as the skills academy and things like that we can start to create. I think there's something here we need to make sure we don't lose, and it's got to be something that actually works for Thurrock. Particularly, it's why slightly going back to how the previous deal conversations were before we couldn't get over the line when we were trying to do a level 2 or level 2.5, depending on where we were in the county. In terms of voting rights, I think I know the government is split 3-2-2 for this authority, and I think that's reasonable. I'm just mindful that previously we had, if we got to a point where there was both two unitaries didn't agree, which is what we've got now, that it was an automatic veto. Obviously now there's no provision. If we get a split of the authorities, and depending on whether or not the mayor makes other voting members, there's no guarantee that Essex and Southend still have a universal veto on any proposals that come forward. So I think that's just something to be mindful of, that although we may be able to vote, if the mayor decides to give an extra seat in a voting position, suddenly that automatic veto may be eroded. And I think it's just saying to make sure if the unitaries as they currently exist in a combined authority are not happy, then we need to make sure it does continue to work and we still have a good say over that process. And I think that's what leads really onto the conversations about then what would a combined authority look like perhaps after local government reform, and how those voting rights would work. And I think we need to not shy away from having that conversation early on to actually make sure that we don't end up just stumbling into it and we then curtail, going, all the new authorities are here, and we're not actually aware to the fact and acute to be aware that the constitutional members of this board will change and of the authority. And I think that's just something we need to make sure we are forefront in leading on and actually have that conversation on. But I think for the most part, I think our responses matches Southend. We're quite reasonable in what we want. We are very excited by this opportunity. But let's just make sure we get it right. I think that's the most important part of this. And I really think there's some great opportunities, and we should be actually angling for everything we can. If it means just as much as bringing perhaps more into the deal, bring the health service into account and have that conversation like Greater Manchester does, and actually bringing in a chairman of whatever the new health structures could be as the mayor, fantastic. We start to have the conversation again about getting more political control over NHS commissioning. I think there's a lot of agreement over this across the authority that Thurrock's got a bad deal. Why don't we use the mayor to actually make sure we get a better one?
Turn it on. Councillor Coxwell, thank you. Next, Councillor Spate. Councillor Spate, you've helpfully circulated what you were going to say, but if you want to take 4 minutes to address us, you're more than welcome.
Thank you, Chair. I may beg your indulgence because it might take slightly more than 4 minutes, but what I've got here sort of covers both items, and I wouldn't be speaking on the second item, so I'll go with your indulgence. So thank you for the opportunity to comment during this evening's debate. I'm speaking on behalf of my group colleagues who have approved this statement, though they clearly reserve the right to speak individually if they wish to. Together with fellow members of the Council's Member Devolution and LGR Working Group, I recently sat in on a very useful briefing on this evening's agenda. However, though it was a helpful and informative session, I left it with a sense of fait accompli and with a sense that Thurrock's forthcoming participation in wider debate was at best pallid and unimaginative. I was also disappointed to be briefed on Thurrock's official contribution to a consultation over the development of a county-wide mayor's office. That document is available to read as an appendix to this evening's documentation, and the overwhelming gist in there is strongly agrees. I concur that I think most elected members recognise the inevitability of the creation of the Mayor's office, but I do not feel that over the 7 specified answers, concerns for Thurrock, or from Thurrock rather, are truly represented. The Council strongly agrees with the delivery of benefits, governance arrangements, economic, geographical support and social outcomes. To be fair, the Council does say in its response that it strongly backs proposed governance arrangements for the mayoral combined county authority, and that no one existing upper tier authority on its own can direct policy and allocate resources across the whole of Greater Essex. It's one of the few specifics that is singled out. I've no issue with that statement, but the paucity of detail and what happens in the interim to Thurrock's best interest concerns myself and colleagues. The Council also agrees a mayor will support the interests and needs of local communities and reflect local identities. Well, the nearest thing we have had to a county mayor is a police and crime commissioner over recent years, and very few people I know think that Thurrock is a better place for his influence. The council also thinks a mayor will improve the natural environment, the local natural environment. I suspect North and Mid-Essex will emerge a lot better off than Thurrock's Thames Riverside boroughs and all our environmental problems. Councillor Kent has said this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for Thurrock to become part of something bigger and to help shape a future that is right for local people. They deserve better than the failures of the past, and I can't wait to start work. I concur wholeheartedly with that statement. The problem is I don't get any perception from our senior leadership team that they're loading up their guns and getting ready for a confrontation. I see civic leaders in other parts of the east of England challenging the government's brief and standing up for the rights of their residents. Now, it may well be Councillor Kent is a very seasoned campaigner, and he may have a strategy of keeping powder dry and keeping a defence of Thurrock under wraps, and if so, I wish him and colleagues well. But I fear that when anyone goes into negotiation looking weak and talking compromise, it fares less well. We are in our third year of intervention, and both major groups have had seats at the top table in that time. But collectively, what have they achieved? In their last report to government, commissioners said a combined county authority will improve local government services. A lot of people in Thurrock may choose to differ with that, given recent performance levels under a commissioner-led system whereby services in Thurrock have been slashed. Improved local government services, and that's in quotes as I've written it down, can have a number of different meanings, one of which is quite simply cutting off services to improve the bottom line, but at what expense to the rights and requirements of the people of Thurrock. We also have a cohort of commissioners who publicly criticise those who challenge. They have cut down on scrutiny by elected members, time limiting the possibility to challenge decision-making, and have the temerity to call that good progress, even though the chairs of scrutiny, including myself, have been very critical. Commissioners say the council is also delivering on a number of major projects. I'm not sure what they are, as most projects in this borough are either stagnant or stopped. The commissioners also say a limited number of members have not treated officers and their decisions or their fellow members with the respect and courtesy that we would expect to see within a professional organisation. Make no mistake, that's very much a jibe at myself and some of my colleagues who have not been prepared to stand idly by and remain muted. We have challenged and where we believe things are wrong and where decisions have been made that are wrong and where incompetence has been identified, and we've spoken up. But that's ended up on the naughty step because we use strongly worded, direct criticism. I stress it's been pointed out that we haven't used foul or abusive language, but our comments are deemed offensive because they question the capability of decision makers and the outcome of those decisions. In the public sector, apparently that's not de rigueur. That independent voice that puts people before politics is going to be even more dissipated in a bigger unitary council and unheard of in a mayor's office. Yes, we need change. Thurrock Council's a busted flush and it's let Thurrock residents down. That's indisputable. But this latest change is just one in a series. Thurrock Urban District Council was formed in 1936. It was created from the former urban districts of Grays, Thurrock, Purfleet, Tilbury and the Orsett Rural District. And it was created on government advice because bigger is better. The district was abolished in 1974 with the formation of Thurrock Borough Council, which was supposed to bring a more professional approach and a shiny modern look. And we got some civic change in a mayoral office with the chair of the council assuming title of mayor. Bigger was going to be better with a shiny badge. Well, apparently not, because in 1998, under another piece of intervention under the Local Government Act, Thurrock became a unitary authority with responsibility for all its own services. Bigger, it was said again, is better. But perhaps central government got it wrong again. In 2003, we had the formation of Thurrock Thames Gateway Development Corporation, with planning and strategy removed from the council's portfolio of responsibility because it was failing. TTGDC proved to be very, very expensive and achieved little. It did deliver High House Production Park and was instrumental in the creation of DP World London Gateway. But despite employing dozens of highly paid experts, a lucratively rewarded governing body and a CEO and whose efforts ended in infamy rather than success, it crashed and burned in Eric Pickell's bonfire of the Quangos. Ironically, this week, the government has been calling in its boffins to work out how to cut Quangos again as the embers of Mr. Pickell's torch burning grew more and more. Reinventing the wheel is a government speciality. Bigger in the case of TTGC, and planning certainly was not better. But that ever-turning wheel has been spun again, and we have devolution and local government ahead of us. What difference will it make to the lives of the people of Thurrock? It's a moot point, but I think it could fail unless Thurrock Council stands its ground. Whoever we're linked with, be it northwards with Brentwood or Chelmsford, or along the Thames with Castle Point and Southend, Thurrock will be the financial powerhouse. Its economy will empower change, and Thurrock needs to be best positioned to drive that change. I'm not sure the documents before us tonight reflect that drive, but I hope I'm wrong. And finally, the elephant in the room is Thurrock's debt. To be fair, it's becoming increasingly obvious that some of our colleague councils all across Essex have debt problems. Some are large scale, and in Basildon's case, likely to grow larger, but they pall in the presence of ours. The government...
Neil, can I ask you to come to an end? We do have a copy, but you're
well,
on 8 minutes
okay,
now.
well, it's there. I did ask that the copy be published. I would ask then it be published in full in the minutes. I've sent an updated copy to them. Basically, the gist of this is we've been told time and time and time again that bigger is better. And yet, since 1936, virtually every time bigger is better has failed not to achieve the outcomes. And I fear that bigger being better at the moment, unless we really stand and fight for Thurrock, we're going to be losing out. Thurrock should be one of the richest, best boroughs in the south of England. People I spoke to in industry and whatever, they all agree with that. We should be better. I just ask you tonight, when you make your decisions, Cabinet, you know, are you really, really, really putting the best interests of Thurrock first?
Thank you. I will now open for other contributions from non-executive members. People want to indicate in the traditional manner. No one? No? Okay. Any? No? Okay. Any questions? Okay. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. Basildon Council have advertised a couple of policy officer positions in the past few days that's going to cost $140,000 over 2 years. The interim report that we have suggests that in this preparatory stage, costs are about £5 to £7.5 million we're looking at, with Thurrock looking at about £1 million. And there's a request in there that's all fully funded by government. Given that that's still something to be requested, my understanding is no funding has been allocated to any council. So Basildon Council going out for these positions, the policy officer positions were specifically for devolution and reorganisation. Presuming they've not got any funding from that, so they're using their own budget. So my question is, are Thurrock going to hire any additional staff for this and use budget funds to sort of pay their salary?
So when we set the budget at the last council meeting, which seems a long time ago, but it was last week or the week before, we made a provision of £2 million for the costs associated to both devolution and local government reorganisation.
Thank you.
Councillor Byrne.
Thank you. Devolution, but the biggest question I'm asked, that people don't ask questions about devolution, they say, is the inquiry for the finance scandal going to continue, or is this all going to be lost in the mishmash of that? So I don't think I've ever been asked a question about devolution, but I'm asked every day, is this going to let the possibly guilty off and it's going to be lost?
No, I think that knowing that, and that is an LGR question, not a devolution question, but knowing that Thurrock will cease to exist in 2-3 years' time concentrates everybody's mind that we need to use the time that we have to continue doing what we can to expose the guilty, to recover the money that we think was inappropriately taken from us, and to bring the guilty to book. Having that time limit can actually be useful, concentrates everybody's minds. Councillor Shinnick.
Yeah, John, Could you just sort of try and let us know what idea, which councils we're going to get involved with? Do you have any clue as yet?
So again, Sue, that is an LGR, local government reorganisation question, not a devolution question. But the simple answer is that the government prospectus says that we're looking at populations of 500,000 or greater. What we're trying to do is to balance two competing priorities. One is that we keep local government local, that we make sure that whatever new authorities are created have a sense of place, and that communities have a real connection with those authorities. We're balancing that against having to put together places that are, I could say, large enough, are strong enough, resilient enough, have the economies of scale to make sure that they succeed. What we can't afford to do are to create new authorities that are serving Section 114 notices in 18 months' time, because that would be an absolute disaster, and we're not going to do that. I'm not going to get drawn at this stage into whether the best solution for Essex is 2 councils or 6 councils. We will let the evidence drive it, and we will talk more about that when we come to the next item. So, Councillor Deborah Arnold. Thanks.
Thank you. In order to support equalisation of council tax in the new authority, given that Thurrock has got one of the lowest tax rates at the moment, how much does Cabinet expect Thurrock residents will have to pay to meet the cost of reorganisation, and how will they go about sort of a process to do that?
So again, that isn't a devolution issue. That's a question for when we get to local government reorganisation. But I would just ask people to not think about it as services being provided as they are now. We'll be creating new authorities that will deliver services in new ways. And the starting point has to be, how much does it cost us to deliver those services? So I think it's difficult to say whether the council tax burden would be greater than it is now, less than it is now, the same as it is now. It'll be on a different footprint with services being provided in a different way. Councillor Raper.
Thank you. In the discussions that have already been taking place, are there any very obvious barriers that are coming up with the other councils that we're talking to, with the other people? Would you say there's anything that stands out? Thank you.
No, when it comes to devolution, I think all 15 authorities plus the Police Fire Crime Commissioner, who will be abolished as a result of this, are in the same place. And as Councillor Coxall said, you know, I can go back 20 years nearly. I can go back to the Gordon Brown government that started looking at devolution and didn't manage to deliver it in the way that they wanted. We've had successive Conservative administrations nationally that wanted to deliver devolution and made some progress. Places like the Tees Valley, the West Midlands, Greater Manchester. We've now got a new government that is not going to waste time on kind of endless consultations. It is going to deliver these combined authorities, and I think regardless of political parties, everybody is in favour of doing that. Councillor Green.
Thank you, Leader. With everything that's going on, what part of this you're worried about, or if any?
On devolution, it's the point that's been made a couple of times, a point that Neil made and a point that George made. It's about remembering that we have incredible potential in Thurrock, whether it's the potential of things like the Freeport of Port of Tilbury, Port of Purfleet, DP World, our proximity to London, you know, just huge opportunities. People give us fantastic opportunities as well. And whatever happens next, we have to make sure that people who won't live in Thurrock anymore because it won't exist, but who live in Chadwell or Tilbury or Corringham or Ockenden or anywhere else will be best served and will actually benefit from both devolution and local government reorganisation. So the bit that worries me is making sure we get that right, because I don't want to be sitting somewhere in 20 years with somebody saying, so who were the people who let those opportunities slip? Whatever we do has to be done to maximise those opportunities. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. What measures are we putting in place to engage with our residents in all this process? Because after all said and done, there's been so much going on with councils, and we get asked questions every day, you know, what is this, what is that? I think we need to engage more with our residents, so I like to think there's a programme of agenda to do so.
So again, we need to separate out the two. So for devolution, it's a government-led consultation which is live at the moment, and I kind of encourage everybody to take part in that. When it comes to local government reorganisation, we will do two things. We'll make sure that we get as much information out as we possibly can, as early as we can, to explain what's happening, to explain why it's happening, and then we'll look at the best methods of engaging with the community to take the community with us. What we don't want to do, come back to that sense of place, is we don't want to lumber future generations with a new configuration, with a new authority that doesn't work for them. And part of that is by engaging with them. So we're designing that at the moment. Councillor Massey.
Thank you, Chair. I know it's very early days, but it does say in the report the plan has no formal legal status as yet, and this is very early days, like I say. But work is going to go on this on pace, I know. And when all the consultation, the public is done, and everything else, and with everything's fleshed out, will it come back to a full council decision for us to say yes, we're all in, or no, we're not?
So again, it depends on the way government rolls out the decision. My strong view at the moment is that it will be a series of executive decisions, but what we will do is use, if this works this evening, we would use something like this to help us make the decision. If this doesn't work well this evening, then we'll look at another way of doing it. So whether on, I think it will be an executive decision, but we'll be as inclusive as we can. Okay, I've seen nobody else indicate, so I will now... sorry, Councillor Cecil.
Thank you, Chair. What mechanism will be in place to add to the already announced devolved facilities portfolios coming forward? Will there be any more?
So that's a really good question. So in the last round of devolution, the government went in for what were known as devolution deals, and you started negotiating the kind of powers that an area would want to pull down. What the government's doing at the moment is to say, here are the powers that you will get. We take those as very much a starting point, and we would want to add to them and to take further powers down in a way that areas like Greater Manchester are doing. But I think that relies on that combined authority and that strategic mayor proving that they're capable of running those services and they're making a difference. So I see this as very much a starting point, not an end point.
Thank you.
Right, if there's no one else, can I thank non-executive members, and we will move to Cabinet discussing the item. And I just feel that this is one of those that I don't really need to introduce. We've been through it. We've had some really good contributions from colleagues across the council. You know, I will just repeat that it's been the aim of successive governments, both political colours, recognising that this country is far too centralised, and that we need to take powers from Westminster and exercise them closer to home. So for me, this is a real once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to make a really fundamental change to the way the country's run, and to deliver skills and regeneration and growth in Essex in a way that just hasn't been done. And I always come back to that one figure that says that if the economy of Essex performed at the same level, just the same level as the average of the South East, that economy would be 17% larger. And 17% larger economy means more jobs, it means better jobs, that means more business rates coming in to provide better services, and most importantly, it means more money in people's pockets. And I think that's a prize that's well worth having. And I think that is what's offered by devolution. I will stop and open up to questions or comments from portfolio holders. Councillor Mordoni.
Thank you, Chair. I'm delighted to welcome this report and the huge opportunities that devolution presents for our area. I think this is a moment to take control of our own future, to make decisions that truly reflect the needs of our communities and to drive real, lasting change for the people we serve. Devolution means power coming back to us, closer to home, where we can shape policies that actually work for our residents. It means that instead of waiting for decisions to be made in Westminster, we will have the ability to invest in transport, grow our economy, improve public services, and make Greater Essex a better place to live, work, and do business. A mayoral combined authority will bring councils together across Greater Essex to focus on what really matters, getting more funding, creating jobs, fixing infrastructure, and making sure local people benefit from new opportunities. With the right approach, we can unlock massive potential, improving transport links, supporting young people with better training, attracting businesses, and making sure our region thrives. The financial benefits of devolution are also clear. By working together, we can secure new investment that would otherwise not be available. We can cut out waste, reduce duplication, and make better use of public money to improve services across the region. This isn't just about governance, it's about making sure people see real improvements in their everyday lives. As Cabinet Member for Resources, my responsibility is to ensure that devolution delivers the best possible deal for our residents in Thurrock. So I think we must approach this with ambition, but also with caution. We can't sign up for a deal that puts us in a worse financial position or takes away our ability to make the right choices for our communities. But if we get this right, the benefits are huge. Imagine an Essex where we have faster, better transport links, where businesses thrive and bring new jobs, and where our young people have the skills and opportunities they need to succeed. Imagine an Essex where we can plan for the future with confidence, knowing we have the power and resources to make positive changes. That's the potential of devolution. I agree with Councillor Kent that this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to create a stronger, more prosperous and more connected Greater Essex. I fully support the ambition behind this proposal and will fight to make sure that we secure a deal that truly delivers for our residents in Thurrock. Thank you.
Councillor Muldowney, thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Watson.
Thank you. Completely agree with Councillor Muldowney. This is probably going to affect my portfolio and the shadow portfolio more than any of the other portfolios. But what I really welcome more than anything is the transport and the skills link that this will have on devolution. At the moment, whatever our local plan will look like, or those in Essex will look like, let's work in partnership with the mayor that can actually unlock transport funding and to bring it back into Essex. Also, if it is done right, and there is some really good combined authorities that has done right, Manchester being one of them, they have just brought in their buses into public service that come under a mayoral authority. And I think it can be done the right way to do it. So I think, for me, I'm fully supported on devolution. I think we need to go forward with it and just to give the people of Essex what they deserve, rightly so, which is good skills, good transport links, and also we will unlock the regeneration that has to unlock. And also, Councillor Spate, I'd just like to say, big shout out to you. Thanks for mentioning planning again. Thanks.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Before I move to the vote, I just want to thank everybody again for their contributions. And I'm just struck by some of the things, particularly that Councillor Coxall said. And he's right to remind us that we have to get the best deal that we can for people in Thurrock. When it comes to delivering skills, especially adult skills, we know that level 3 qualifications in Thurrock are just woefully lacking, well behind where they should be. You and Councillor Watson have spoken about strategic transport, public transport. You know, it's just essential that the jobs that will be created, local people have the skills to access them, but they also have the transport to get to them as well, something that's lacking at the moment. We will be ambitious. This isn't actually the point of decision. This is getting us into the process. and we will be ambitious as the process unrolls. And Councillor Coxall is also right to remind us of some of the niceties of the governance around this stuff. And, you know, the voting arrangements are something that already has taken up more time than I would like, but it is something that we are very, very alive to, and we'll kind of make sure that whatever happens both in the interim and what happens post-local government reorganisation, that we have the power to make sure that things are done with us and not done to us. With that, I'm going to move to recommendations. We've got recommendations at 2.1 at the bottom of page 387, which is to agree the content of Thurrock Council's response to government's consultation on devolution in Greater Essex as set out in Appendix 1. Are we agreed? Thank you. And 2.2, to delegate the submission of the consultation response, including authority to make minor changes and alterations to the Assistant Chief Executive following consultation with the Leader and Deputy Leader. Again, are we agreed? Thank you. We will now move to item 20, which is Local Government Reorganisation in Greater Essex, the interim plan, and I will ask Councillor Coxall if he has anything he wishes to say.
Oh, thank you, Leader. Just like to start, I came into this process quite annoyed that the way that how I come across seeing the plan. The plan was published a week prior to it being published by Thurrock. It was available the Monday before publication of the cabinet meetings by tendering in Chelmsford, and I just found it a bit disconcerting to councillors for going into this process. And I know it's not. Don't want to labour the point, but it was the fact that I hadn't seen it by Thurrock giving it to me, and I actually just stumbled across another authorities council meeting because I'm a bit sad looking at them, and I found that a bit disheartened that I went into that process not seeing it on it's being given to me to be encompassing. So I just wanted to point that out. I think it's just something we need to work on going forward into this and make sure we don't repeat things like that, because there's a number of councillors who may not have been as forgiving as I was feeling on this matter. Straight away, obviously this is an interim plan. I would like to see a bit more detail, but I appreciate this is a Greater Essex strategy, particularly around the question of where Thurrock wants to position itself. I know we're looking for the evidence, but I'm very much looking at Norfolk and Suffolk and how they are handling the process. Their interim plans are including modelling for authorities, and they've got it may not be in the agreement, but they've at least started the conversation around the modelling. We haven't quite done that yet, and I appreciate we're waiting for the evidence, but I would have expected, given we had the ASLA model, some of that evidence is already there to work on, and I think that is a position that we're a top-tier authority, and I will continue to labour the point we need to be leading as one, and I think that's what I'm hoping to see, and I feel I haven't quite seen it just yet, but if we're going into this process for September with a final decision and a final proposal, Thurrock's got to have a very clear vocal voice on this, and I'm mindful that there is a political leadership matter here, but there is also a corporate responsibility for the rest of the authority. There is a number of questions. Obviously, I'll put my cards on the table. I detest the idea of a five-authority Essex. I do not think it works at all, and we will be setting up local government again for failure. Thurrock should learn this firsthand, and we shouldn't be afraid to call it out. And I know I think it's a matter for some of the executive to start being quite public about that. We have to be clear. Thurrock has learned firsthand what it's like, the problems of being a small local authority, and we are paying the price for it. That doesn't mean we then need to set up local authorities that do repeat the same mistake. Looking at council tax particularly, Thurrock has historically a very low council tax base. It was at one point one of the lowest in the countries in comparison to other local authorities. If we go into LGR, I'm a bit worried the report is stating that we are having the natural inclination is to increase council tax rather than the conversation of rebasement. Like we can't, going into this, our mind is we must rise council tax to increase, but actually the report should be a bit more clearer to say perhaps there is the opportunity in the Local Government Act to have a rebasement on Band D. That is the thing we should be looking at, and I'm a bit worried that the natural inclination is we'll up council tax rather than have an actual conversation of what is the right level around the evidence base to actually support a council tax increase. particularly then going into what Thurrock should do. As a top tier, we need to be leading this. And I just would like, I think it's going forward for the next, I think it's really important for the next round of, for our final proposal, that all councillors continue to have a say. I know we've got an open cabinet meeting like this tonight, and I'll be interested to see, but it doesn't labour the point. I still think, so, although it's a recommendation, cabinet is the decision body, I think going forward for the final proposals at a council meeting to at least have council vote on to advise cabinet particularly. I know the working group's there, but a vote for all 49 members is very powerful in this, which is part of the role of a councillor. And I think that's really important that we don't reduce and sideline from that. Especially as I think it's great we can raise the conversations with the executive tonight, but some councillors may feel that that's the limit of their say, and appreciate the way the truncated process is. It is an executive decision, but it doesn't mean we just need to abide by the minimum recommendation. And I think that is something just to look into. But straight away, my now thing is I love a South Essex authority, and I think the ASLA model is what we should be looking for, and that's what I will continue to lobby for, because I think that model is the best position for Thurrock. I just would like the administration to come out with something, and I'm hoping that we don't see that in August, September. I think that's a conversation we need to be having in May, June, to actually start getting the fundamentals around this, and I think that's a position that I think many of the councillors across this chamber would like to see.
George, thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Spate, you said you weren't going to speak on this.
I did, but I didn't get all the way through War and Peace Part 1. I just think there's,
I'll give you
if you
2
would
minutes.
give me the indulgence of it won't take that long. I'm pleased to hear Councillor Watson speak earlier on, because last night Councillor Watson organised a very, very useful briefing session relating to Section 106, and lots of people from our local communities took part, and I felt it was very beneficial for everybody that took part, which brings me to the last chapter that I was going to get to. With the creation of a mayoral role and a much larger unitary authority set to follow, I'm concerned about the gap between grassroots and the power base will inevitably grow. There will be fewer locally based councillors with a voice at the table and less of an opportunity for local voices to be heard. I spoke critically earlier, but I'd like to make a constructive suggestion. There are currently around 10,000 community, neighbourhood, parish and town councils in place in England, run under the eye of the National Association of Parish Councils. The activities fall into 3 categories: delivering local services to meet local needs, giving communities a voice and representation, and improving the quality of local life. These councils run numerous services, depending on their size, which include delivering allotments, car parks, celebrations, festivals, community buses, litter bins, parks, toilets, and bits and bobs. And it improves the quality of life with community projects and services. I would suggest that some, if not all, of those functions could help increase the effectiveness of local governance, which is what we're talking about now, and assist the mayoral office and whatever new unitary authority we get. We have precedent. We don't have to reinvent the rule book. In Thurrock, we have a network of forums, many of whom were represented and spoke well last night, who could perhaps take on some of these roles. There is an opportunity for Thurrock Council to consider how to create a first tier when it goes to the negotiating table. It would mean allocating probably a small precept to each local group, but it would be a sign that this council's legacy will be that it still values local communities and their voice. I would urge our executive to give thought to supporting a first tier in the future proposals to put forward. And in contrast to the earlier theme, maybe it will be a case of smaller is better.
Thank you. Any other non-executive members wishing to? Councillor Howden.
Thank you, Leader. And I'll start by saying Councillor Worrell has spent a great deal of time engaging with corporate scrutiny on this subject, and it's very, very welcome. I think that one of the things that we've got to do to maximise our position in all of this, we need to have a proper delivery unit. Dr. Smith and senior officers are spending a great deal of time on this subject, but they've all got substantive day jobs to do. This requires serious macroeconomic planning, especially of the health system. That requires skill, that requires time, undiluted time. Now, at the current moment, we're recruiting for, I think, just over a dozen roles across the council, one including a consultant in public health. If we've got the time to recruit to a non-statutory post, a post that doesn't directly deliver care and comes with about £100,000 wage bill, we have certainly got the time to build a proper delivery unit to get this right. And there's lobbying that needs to be done sideways and upwards. Sideways with colleagues to try and make them understand, especially make district colleagues understand that there are certain things that they may not necessarily understand about the health and care system. For example, everyone talked about kicking social care up to the mayor. There are certain things that you do want the mayor to have. The mayor should have commissioning of acute beds. It makes sense. For a tiny unitary like us, trying to model acute beds is an absolute nightmare. So that sitting with the mayor makes sense. Acute mental health makes sense with being at a mayoral level. Having things like domiciliary care, things where we have to interact with our community, our constituents, that should definitely remain at a place level, because that's where you integrate it with the third sector, it's where you integrate it with community care to get that wraparound. And I don't think a lot of colleagues understand that, and more to the point, even those on upper tier authorities, frankly, are a little bit obsessed about planning, and they don't always consider actually the main financial meat of the coconut is going to be the social care element. And I think one of the things that's coming out of this process that is very poorly understood, when people keep on talking about Manchester, the way the white paper is structured, a directly elected mayor of Essex becomes the co-chair of the ICS. This is a very poor idea. It will be like having 4 hands on the steering wheel. No one will actually be in charge. Why it works in Manchester is very simple. Sir Richard, who is the vice chair, was the Labour leader of Manchester City Council for a very long time. Andy Burnham is the Labour mayor of Manchester. They have worked together for a long time. They've got a personal relationship that personally works, and it flows quite elegantly. So the Manchester model doesn't work because of the way the Manchester model is designed. The Manchester model works because of natural evolution and osmosis, and because of the personalities of the people involved. So that's where, for us as a tiny unitary that would really like to have an oversized control of the process, we need to try and make sure colleagues understand that it's not just a matter of agreeing across Essex what we'd like to see. We also need to have a delivery unit to negotiate up and explain to government there are certain structural nuances about Essex that may not be present in Manchester, may not be present in Liverpool, and they may need to adopt a slightly different approach that won't require new primary legislation. It requires minor statutory instruments to make these changes. And the last comment I would make is about this process. You know, I'm not opposed to coming to Cabinet. I think it would, on the whole, be healthier to have a full council plenty of time in advance to debate these subjects. You know, I think if we had tried to do in administration all of this by executive action, large swathes of the opposition would set their hair on fire and bound off the walls energetically, rightly so. But frankly, the full council debating process in advance of these conversations can be a tool for you. Now, Councillor Kent's a wily operator. He's been a councillor for almost as long as I've been alive, certainly as long as my leader has been alive. You know full well when you go into a negotiation, if you can, if you can sit, I'm not planning to die anytime soon. If you can sit in a negotiation and you can tell colleagues there are things not just I don't want to do, there are things I can't do because my council has instructed me thusly, you can productively use full council now, and you can use all of us to pile in on the things that you think are difficult in negotiations, and we can actively play that role. Doing it on the night where there's already published papers in front of the Cabinet, let's be quite frank, I was in Cabinet for 6 years with the best will in the world. No one is suddenly going to say, good Lord, James Horden makes a lot of sense. We shall suspend the Cabinet and we shall rewrite this paper. Councillor Hooper's smiling, maybe he does believe that. So yeah, I think there is a productive role that the full council can play well in advance of these conversations, and I think it needs to be about ensuring that colleagues nationally understand nuances of Essex and don't just assume the Manchester model works because of the way the legislation was written, and colleagues in Essex understand internally if they simply become obsessed over place shaping and kind of leave social care as the afterthought that will just go to the mayor, we will be back in the same indebted position in maximum 3.5 years.
Councillor Holden, thank you. Any further contributions? Councillor Johnson.
Thank you very much, Leader. I too would prefer to be having this conversation in a full council, but you know, the report's here, and I'm pleased to hear you say we'll be ambitious and it will be evidence-driven, which I think is definitely the right way to go. I don't think there's any argument with that. I just like the executive to tell us or make sure that when will this evidence be brought forward for scrutiny? Because I don't really want to wait for all the evidence to come in and then we discuss it all in one go, because I think there is some evidence out there already that could have been discussed at full council or even here. I personally wouldn't mind how often I come back and sit down and talk about this. I just hope that you can tell us that that's the way you are going to go forward with evidence, please.
Councillor Johnson, thank you. Any further contributions? No? Okay, if I move to any questions then from non-executive members. Okay, if there are none, I'm looking again just in case I've missed someone, can't see anyone. Okay, I will close the meeting now to non-executive members and move into cabinet session. Councillor Morris-Cook.
Thank you. I do welcome this. With my portfolio, I think it's a huge opportunity for us to do something that we've really probably talked about for years and years, about really getting back into our communities and being led from our communities locally and giving them more power to say exactly what they want to do. And it's something that we have been doing some trial working and some piloting to see how that would work going forward. And I think it really does. Rather than going back to doing things like parish councillors, I think we should be looking more ambitiously and more involving our communities. And I think it's a huge opportunity for us to really do some of the things we say we want to do all the time, but a lot of the time we never actually get to do. So I think it's an amazing opportunity. One of the things that I'm disappointed with is where we talk here, where it says working with others to develop and refine proposals. We've got businesses, university, the MPs, the ICBs, we've got the police, the fire, and then in a tiny bit at the bottom, we will continue to work closely with wider public sector, including our voluntary sector. I think our voluntary sector should have a seat at the table. I think there should be representatives from the voluntary sector from each of the authorities that are involved in this. I think they have an awful lot to say, and I think they have an awful lot to contribute, and I think it would really be value added for them to do that. I have got a couple of other bits. One of the things, and I know, and evidence-based is something I think that is paramount. When I've looked at some of the evidence we've got, it is quite dated, some of it. Is there an opportunity? Because I think some of it could be quite different now. If we look at it, it's like a year, 18 months on. I think a lot of things have changed. And I think it might be really helpful for us to have as much up-to-date information, providing it isn't going to take 6 months to a year to do that, because clearly we haven't got the time. But when you've got the base data with all the technology we have in life, I'm sure there is opportunities. And there's one other point. I just think I'm getting all my points out at one point here. In the 12 things that we have asked government for, there is one thing that I am extremely nervous about, where it talks about the inspection furlough. Now, whilst I understand, and I know we got outstanding, Councillor Artstein, it's saying anything that's been in the last 18 months, that there isn't anything really critical to do that we would not look to do. I think we have to be very, very cautious with this, because I think there are checks and balances for a reason. We were highly critical that the Audit Commission was taken away. I think we've got to be very, very mindful of going forward, of not falling into a similar trap.
Well, thank you. Councillor Muldowney.
Thank you, Chair. So I welcome this report looking at ways to reorganise local government in our area. This could mean fewer councils but bigger ones, with the aim of making services better and more efficient. I think it is an important opportunity and I welcome the discussions. There will obviously also be clearly huge challenges and a huge amount of work to get through in order to disaggregate so many councils and to put them back together again in a new formation. The main priority for me as things emerge is making sure that any changes are actually good for the people who live here in Thurrock, as well as the wider Essex footprint. We need a system that's financially stable, well run and able to provide the services people rely on, not just now, but for many years to come. I think there is an opportunity for us here in Thurrock to get out from under the millstone of debt that we've got if we bring forward the right proposals in the right way. I will only support changes that are backed by solid evidence and make sense financially. I won't agree to something just because it looks good on paper or because others are pushing for it. My job is to make sure whatever happens, it's the right choice for our community. So there will be more information coming out, so I think we'll all be studying that carefully, and any decision, as Councillor Kent has said, should be based on facts and reality, not guesswork or pressure to rush into something. Right now, based on the information that I've had sight of, some of the ideas being discussed don't seem financially realistic. I'll be honest about that. But however, I understand that this plan does not commit us to any one course of action, and so I'm happy to agree the recommendations. But given our present financial situation here, we really need to make sure that any new council structure is going to work and that it won't lead to cuts, higher costs or other problems down the line. If an idea doesn't hold up financially, I won't be supporting it. So this isn't the final decision. There's obviously a lot of work to be done before anything's agreed later this year. So I will keep open to any new information coming on board and keep fighting for the best deal for our community. I know that Councillor Worrell has set up a cross-party working group, which I welcome. And I think tonight it's been really good to hear contributions from the other group leaders and other members in the chamber. And I feel that there is a consensus that we are all on this journey together, which feels good, and I thank everybody for that. So change can be a good thing, but only if it's done in the right way. I hope we all keep working together to make sure that whatever happens, our residents here in Thurrock get the best deal possible. Thank you.
Councillor Muldowney, thank you. Councillor Worrell was next.
Oh, that was a ding-ding. Yeah. Yeah, who wants ice creams? I probably spoke about this quite a lot last night, so if anybody wants to know exactly how we feel about the whole process, you only need to watch the recording of last night's corporate, where I got quite a grilling on the process around how we'll be running devolution and LGR. So thanks to the committee for that last night. But what I want to say is, you know, we're at the beginning, you know, and it is good to have us all in this room together. But this is about all 49 of us, right? And there is no way that this cabinet is going to try to do anything that closes out the rest of the elected members, or in fact the communities or our partners, because this, what we're doing now, is for decades and decades. So we have to make sure that we get it all right, which was why I was really, we do need to be ambitious. And for the meetings that I've been to, I think that our officers, John, have really held the line for Thurrock. And there has been a fair amount of pushing, you know, but we're not here to make any decisions that will not benefit Thurrock. So whether that is some want 3, some want 5, some want 4, you know, we'll make sure that we only make that decision when we've got everything in front of us that tells us that it's right for Thurrock. And part of that work to make sure we're getting that right, and as the evidence comes forward, is that we've set up this working group. And that's a cross-party working group, so I'm chairing it, and then we've got 2 members, and then there's 2 members from the Conservatives, and then we've asked for a member from the Independents, and Councillor Spate is there to represent his party. And we've had our first meeting, and yes, it was raised there that another council had their meeting and that you'd found the papers the night before, but it was also explained that that council shouldn't have held their meeting, and that they actually went to that meeting with a draft that was also had grammar mistakes and spelling mistakes because it wasn't agreed. So they actually called their meeting too early. So when there was nothing about holding anything back from this council before you should have seen it. But the Working Party has had its first meeting, and we will continue to have meetings, and it will gather pace. So Councillor Johnson, you said you'll come to as many meetings. George come on his own, so it'd be really great if maybe you want to be the second person and join the working group, you know, because we really do need to get quite a lot of work done. The subjects that we will be looking there, you know, we're going to be looking for advice, we're going to be running through different stuff that will be fed into the bids, you know, there's going to be quite a programme of getting the bid ready and making sure that we've got all of the evidence and that everything's, you know, across the political divides to make sure that we are having everybody's voices heard. So it's not just about the Cabinet, it's not us shutting down on democracy. So there will be times when we go out to the council, to the residents, themed meetings, you know, public questions. There's consultations in and around the towns. But we're only at the beginning. I kind of feel like people feel like we've run away and done a lot. You know, the proposal's not even signed and got to go in till Friday. We haven't made any big decisions. We're really, really at the beginning. So I'd ask that you all embrace the work that we're doing. Take your political hats off when you come to these meetings, and certainly in the working group, because we want to share really as much as we can in that working group, but at the same time we have to protect the council from the conversations that are happening. And I just want to finish by saying that we will never settle on anything that's low for Thurrock. You know, we've always punched above our weight, you know, in any arena. And we've also got a secret weapon in that we've got Dr. Dave representing us, who has done it. And the advice that he's given is absolutely excellent. And I know that wider Greater Essex is looking to him as well for advice. I'm confident that this is going to be exciting times for Thurrock, and I just hope that we can all go on the same journey.
Okay. I've seen nobody else indicate. Have I missed anybody? Councillor Watson.
Sorry. So I think the LGR paper frightens me more than anything, to be frank with you. And it was all for the same reasons that Councillor Holden said about adult social care. And we could be put in with a district that has never, ever, ever done social care. But that's the reason we've got to now wait for the evidence and see what comes best. 100% will tell you that, for me, Thurrock comes first above everything else. And I think we're the jewel in the crown for Essex, to be honest, with all our skills and all our free ports and everything else. So I'll be fighting tooth and nail with that to make sure we get the right deal going across with yous. It's also a heavy burden for me to actually think about, you know, it's our 49 decisions here. There will be no more Thurrock in 3 years' time, so it has to be right. Therefore, the evidence has to be right. I'm not going to stand there and start screaming and shouting like other districts round the corner from us that are doing that a lot, because it's not based on evidence. It's based on what they want. Not saying that's ruled out, But what I'm saying is let's have a look at the evidence first. Bring it back. You're in a cross-working group, Councillor Cockshaw. So I'd expect you to go back and be saying something to your group about it and what you're picking up. You know, we've all got, Councillor Spate is also on that. So you should be talking to your group about it too. And obviously, if something comes out really that we need to go on and do, we will do that. The next 6 weeks is going to be 6 months. Sorry, is going to be really imperative because as soon as this letter is signed and gone, it'd be full pace. There'd be no looking back. And we've just got to keep going, get the evidence, and go across the line. And then when September comes and a decision is made, then again, it's a whole new ball case again where we've got to start looking at services, pulling services together in those different areas and making sure that Thurrock rules and the residents are the first and foremost of my mind, and they should be at yours, and they will be. So nothing's hidden. If you've got a question, you've got the leader and the deputy leader that's working on this all the time. Come to us if you want to speak to us. Door's always open to you. There's never going to be anything. So that's where I stand. But this is a golden opportunity as well, because I can't see us getting out the debt. I can't see us always getting out that £1 billion worth of debt. The government's not going to come in on its white horse and turn around and say, we'll pay everything off. It's not going to happen. So something else has got to happen. And that means we're going to have to go in to another authority. And that means that it's got to be financially sustainable. It's no good going with another authority and in 2-3 years' time we fell over and we're back to square one on a section 114. That's not what none of us want. So let's do it properly. Let's get the figures in front. The up-to-date figures, not last month's or last year's or 5 years back, the ones that are happening now. And then we can have a proper conversation about what the next rule is once we've made those decisions.
Councillor Watson, thank you. Okay. If there's nobody else, I'll start with addressing George's points, and you know, you will appreciate that trying to coordinate 15 different authorities and get them all to publish the same stuff on the same day is, you know, it's just not going to happen. You know, we will try to get the coordination better as we go along, but you know, and that's almost inevitable, and I hope everybody kind of accepts that. I'd say the point about the level of detail, but you use the example of Norfolk and Suffolk. And I would just remind you that we in Essex are working with a county council, 2 unitary councils, 11 district councils, which they don't have in Norfolk and Suffolk. They just have you know, districts and counties. It's an entirely different level of complexity. And then if you look at, if I give another example, you look at Hampshire, that have 3 unitaries, 11 districts and a county council. They've already asked for more time. So I think it's important that we proceed at the appropriate pace to make sure that we get things done and we get things done properly. What else was there? You make a really reasonable point about whether the final decision should be at a full council meeting rather than a cabinet meeting, and of course we'll look at that and consider that. You know, we are committed to involving as many people as we can. There isn't a council meeting programmed at the moment for September. It could be that we have a themed meeting in September that looks at this issue, so we'll take that on board. Neil makes, I think, a really good and a valuable point about making sure that whatever we create next is based solidly in communities. I'm not in favour of parish councils. I think there are a few questions that are resolved by having another layer of elected councillors. I just don't think it works. You look up and down the country at the amount of parish councils that carry huge amounts of vacancies, that appoint people rather than elect people. I think it's something for me that's seen its day. The work that Councillor Maurice Cook's carrying out in what we're calling Communities in Action, I think is a more nimble, a more modern and a more appropriate way forward. And I would hope that we'll have something at Cabinet in July, that will kind of flesh out what it is that we're trying to do, and will expand on the pilot work that we've been doing quietly in Chadwell. But we want to do something that enables local areas to have a much greater say over what happens in their area, so that when we become part of a new authority, it's Thurrock that's actually setting the pace, and we have other other areas saying we wish we had what Thurrock has. I think that's really important. And I also fully take Val's point about making sure that we involve the voluntary sector. I think that is important, and we'll look at how we can do that. And again, Val's bit about the inspection furlough. I think if you look at the two big inspections, we've had our Ofsted outstanding, which Vicky mentions from time to time. We have the CQC coming in to look at adults over the summer, so our two big inspections will be out of the way. But you're right, you shouldn't ever close the door to those inspections. For James, and James has been an advocate of moving to larger authorities for many years, so you know has been ahead of the thinking in this. James described it as a delivery unit. You know, what I would say is that we've got a number of existing officers who are completely engaged in this, are making really strong contributions to this work, but we do acknowledge that we need to beef things up. So Dr. Smith and Alex Powell are looking to bring in a couple of people to buttress that and to make sure that we do have the capacity to deliver on it. I think James's bit about lobbying sideways and upwards, again, is a point well made, and it's something that we are beginning to do. We're working on the key messages that we want to get to key people, be that with government, with other local authorities, with businesses, with other key stakeholders, but it is a point that's well made. James also makes that really important point about Greater Manchester, where it is about strong relationships as much as anything else. And you know, it's no surprise that Manchester's ahead of the curve. The starting point for Manchester was the Passenger Transport Authority that goes back, you know, the best part of 30 years. And it is kind of 30 years of working and building and working and building. So, you know, this isn't a quick fix. It's not something that will be an overnight success, but it's something that we do, you know, have to continue to work on. And several people have made the point about the need for evidence. I'll just remind everybody that, you know, the timeline for this was, you know, we put in our application to be on the priority programme on, what was it, the 7th of January. We are here now. You know, of course, we're commissioning people to look at evidence and to pull evidence together for us, as are other authorities across Essex. What we're working on, and we'll be talking about on Friday with other leaders and chief executives, is how we pool the evidence that everybody's gathering to add to all of our cases, and that will answer Val's point, I hope, about making sure that the evidence is as up to date and as relevant as possible. But again, it's a point that's well made. You can get evidence to prove anything. We want evidence that's kind of impartial, unbiased, rigorous, and defendable, and that's what we'll make the decision on. So, you know, finally for me, this isn't the major point of decision. This is about a gateway. This gets the letter into government and gives us the permission to go on and to build that case. You know, people often talk about a marathon, not a sprint. I think this is a triathlon, not a sprint. You know, this is going to be a long haul, and I just genuinely think that the issues that Thurrock's had over the past few years, without opening those up, means that we have been examined, that we've been inward looking, and that we are probably more self-aware than any other authority in Essex. And I think that puts us in a really strong position, a really powerful position when it comes to creating those new authorities. I don't think there is an authority that knows itself better than Thurrock does, and I think that's a really strong place to start from. And I think Lee's said it, you know, we get to September, and frankly, that's when the really hard work starts. That's when we do have to start looking at how we're going to run services in a new authority, how we're going to disaggregate services, disaggregate money, disaggregate land and property, how we're going to run the governance arrangements for those authorities. A whole welter of stuff that will be incredibly complex. It was complicated enough when we cut Thurrock out of Essex County Council. let alone what we're attempting to do now. So nobody should be in any doubt at all about the work that's being done. But at the end of the day, you know, it will be worth it. We will be part of something that is stronger, that is more resilient, that is more ambitious for its residents and more able to deliver the quality of services that people living here deserve. That's what we're aiming for, and that's what we're going to deliver. So I will move to the recommendations, which are on the bottom of page 395. 2.1, agree the Essex interim plan, the plan appended to this report. Is that agreed? Thank you. And as that is agreed, 2.2, to agree to submit the plan to the Minister of State for Local Government and English Devolution on or before the 21st of March 25, and to note that all local authorities in the Greater Essex area will submit the plan as set out in the appendix by the deadline, subject to their decision-making processes. Do we agree? Thank you. 2.3, to delegate to the Assistant Chief Executive authority to submit the plan on or before the 21st of March on behalf of the Council and to make any amendments following consultation with the Chief Executive, Managing Director, Commissioner and the Leader and Deputy Leader to ensure that any changes made by other local authorities can be agreed and reflected appropriately in the final version. Is that agreed? Thank you. And as the delegation 2.3 includes authority to submit the plan in circumstances where one or more local authorities in Greater Essex do not agree to submit the plan as set out in the appendix. So what that's saying is, if somebody else doesn't agree, we still go ahead. Agreed? Thank you. Can I thank everybody? I think that has worked, and I think everybody has kind of behaved. I thought Neil was going to be the longest contribution, but James managed to beat him. Well done, James. And I think we'll just break for a couple of minutes to allow those non-executive members who wish to leave to leave. And we are at item 13, which is the report of the Parking at Schools Task and Finish Group. And I'm going to invite Councillor Byrne as chair of the Place Scrutiny Committee if he wishes to say a few words.
Thank you, Leader. I wish to lend my full support to Fraser and the Parking at Schools Working Group. I'm incredibly proud of the document and the effort that's gone into producing such an excellent piece of work. I've no doubt the Cabinet will welcome and support Fraser with what he's about to present. Back in June, the Place Overschool and Scrutiny Committee identified this and 106 money as two of its priority projects. At the time, we acknowledged that tackling parking at schools would be a thankless and near impossible task. Now that we have achieved this, we had to achieve this without spending any money and basically not seeking any funding. And yet here we are, thanks to the dedication and determination of this group, we now have a way forward. With that, I will hand over to Fraser and sit back and listen like a proud parent.
Councillor Massey.
Follow that. Thank you, Leader, and good evening, everyone. I'm very pleased as the Chair to present the School Parking Task and Finish Group report for Cabinet this evening. The group was brought together following a motion at full council in October 2023, and with cross-member support, the Task and Finish Group, in addition with internal military officers, has also had meetings with various different stakeholders. We felt it was important to get various views and experiences from a good selection of the Thurrock community on this subject. This included a question and answer session with Thurrock's Youth Cabinet, who got to express as young people their experiences whilst travelling and attending school. We had excellent feedback from the Council's Road Safety Lead, who shared in a lot of detail in her role the good and bad practices she has witnessed in Thurrock. Members also took time to attend various local schools at school movement times to see these practices for ourselves, both good and bad. A joint meeting was also held with colleagues on the People ONS, the Childhood Obesity Task and Finish Group, Many issues and ideas were discussed, including the importance of exercise like walking to school and with the tackling of childhood obesity throughout various initiatives. An online and paper public survey/questionnaire was carried out. This has been a great aid to members and various teams involved with the toolkit. This helped ensure the work was led by residents, and it was done in a short period of time and had really good responses in terms of numbers and detail. And more results of this can be found in the Appendix 2 on the agenda pack. We feel the toolkit, which is located at Agenda 1, has been a really useful exercise and gives many options going forward, where you can really make a difference on this important issue for residents, school staff and pupils. Nav and his team have done an excellent job highlighting different ways bad parking can be challenged and potential financial site it could occur, which as members we do appreciate and recognise how important the financial side is to the authority. Some of the no-cost options are campaigns around car sharing, car park charter, putting the onus on the parents on how to park. Secondly, use of drop zones, which could be implemented. Lower cost options would overlap with the People, Task and Finish group, would be the Park and Stride, the walking bus, and learning to ride a bike schemes, bikeability. This option would help get cars away from the schools, all while giving children exercise while travelling to school. As based on public and stakeholder feedback, the inclusion of harder measures, which although these can be more costly, now have a structure and indicative costs. This includes measures such as restricting the road for opening and leaving at school times, normally 30 to 45 minutes, and more options are detailed in the appendix. We quickly realised there is not a silver bullet which would solve every school's issues across the borough, and the Task and Finish group, based on the work we've undertaken, have seen that many schools have unique and legacy issues. But if approved, the toolkit will be trialled and monitored to assess the change and effect it has. I'd like to finish by saying a thank you to all the members who have contributed, the residents for engaging so effectively, and Nav and Lucy and the rest of the officer teams who have done some really good work, which I know can make a big difference to residents and pupils going forward. Thank you.
Councillor Massey, thank you, and thank you to everybody who's taken part in this piece of work. I think there is some really interesting stuff in here, some really interesting ideas, and I think all of us in a role as ward councillors have at least one school in our patch that causes mayhem. And I don't want to get involved tonight in a kind of blow-by-blow account of what happens outside each school. The one thing I will do, though, is it's not really an interest, but as most people know, I live opposite a school. It happens to be a secondary school, so you don't get the kind of level of difficulties that you get outside primary schools. But, you know, we've all seen it, and you want to do two things. You want to try and make the quality of life for people who live around those schools better than it is when it comes to dropping off in the morning and picking up in the afternoon. And secondly, we've just got to be really, really careful about the safety, because, there will be a child or children that are hurt unless we do actually find a solution to some of the chaos that occurs around our schools. I will open up for questions and comments. Councillor Morris-Cook.
Thank you. I do think it made really interesting reading, and I think it's quite useful to actually get some refresh on some things, because some of the things clearly have worked very well in the past, and there's no harm in re-looking at them. However, there are over sort of 50 schools in the borough, and I do understand that there's several measures that can help, but these will be hopefully looked at on a priority basis, and possibly schools not having a current active travel plan might miss out on these in the next 5 years, because the plan is for 5 years. How can we ensure that we really do get all schools, especially the primaries, involved with having, and I know they're academies, but there's nothing wrong with us, I think, trying to encourage them to have an active travel plan, and maybe when they are there, that there might be some higher priorities moved up when all schools have got the travel plan, because there are quite a few that haven't. And I think, some of the ideas that you've come up with are really good, and I also think there's opportunities possibly to looking at having some one-way, having some of the roads main as a one-way outside the schools that I don't think would actually be that detrimental to people that live there, but actually when your children have only got to look one way for cars coming down, it could actually be a massive safety issue. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the point about active travel plans is really important, and I think there has been a step change in the way the council operates. Previously, when we've asked for that, the council has been quite clear, no, not our job. I think now that there has been a change in tone, and it's about engaging and influencing, isn't it? So I think we're much more open for doing that now. Councillor Maldoni.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is a really important issue. I certainly publicised the survey, and lots of my residents took part in that. I think it's really good work. I like the toolkit. The only place where I'm a little unclear is who is the audience for this? Is it the council? Is it schools? Is it who? When you say it's going to be rolled out, who is going to be rolling it out? What are the recommendations? How is it going to be used? I think it would be really, it would be a shame to lose such good work. But for me, I just don't quite, I think the toolkit's absolutely amazing, but I don't really understand who's going to use it and how it's going to be used, and who is the actual audience, and what are the recommendations coming out of this for the way that it should be used or who it should be used with. So I think that's the piece that's missing for me, and I think we need to not lose it because of that. And the other thing, in terms of the survey, a lot of residents took part in this. It's a really big issue for a lot of residents, obviously. So how are we going to feed back to residents who took part in the survey? Because I'm still getting asked questions. I don't want it to be another one of those consultation exercises where we don't close the communication loop, and actually how are we going to feed back to our residents what we've done, and what's come out of this work. I think it's really good, and thanks for all the hard work that went into it. I think it's a really good piece of work. Thank you.
Councillor Madani, thank you. I'm going to ask Lynn to Councillor Worrell next, then I'll ask Councillor Massey to respond to those points.
I'm having a din tonight. This is an amazing piece of work, so thank you for everybody that worked and contributed to it. Because, as Councillor Kent has said, there's probably not a councillor that hasn't opened up emails about parking outside their schools, outside their houses, accidents waiting to happen, people can't get their furniture delivered because the mums are parking outside their houses at drop-off times, you know. So it's a really great piece of work, and what I want to say is probably a little bit about what Councillor Maldoni has said is I'd like to see a copy of this, and that we make a commitment to have a copy of this work delivered to every single school, because when I was reading it, there was ideas in here that would never have crossed my mind as a way of getting children to and from school. So it's almost like it is let's not use it, we've got it, let's give the schools the opportunity to actually try out some of this stuff, because, you know, I just hate to think that it's going to go amiss. So I'm sure that you've probably already thought of ways that it could be used, but I think that we should have a commitment to say that every school, with a covering letter from yourself to say, this is a piece of work that we've done in the council, and we hope that your school will make use of it. But well done to you and your group that carried this piece of work out.
Councillor Massey, I'll bring you back in at the end, but do you want to respond to those points now?
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I think that in terms of priority, that's crucial. We saw that some schools have hardly any near misses, and the others it could be a lot more worrying. The school, the road safety team does have all of the data. It's really easy to read, and it'll be very easy to prioritise. When it comes to travel plans, sometimes it is just the lack of resource in the actual school itself. Like Councillor Kent mentioned, there has been a sea change in terms of now the council are going to be working much more with education to try and get these travel plans out. I know that even a few years ago, my local primary didn't have a travel plan, they now do. So there's definitely changes afoot on there. I think it's really important that travel plans are there in place. It really would help the school in so many different ways, and I can't sort of recommend them enough. Again, when you mentioned one-way access ins and outs, I've seen that work in my ward. It's so much safer. And when it's hard when you've got, like we talked about on the introduction legacy, sort of areas of schools, it makes it really hard. But it'd be really nice to see if any new expansion plans come out through planning, that is included, so that there's proper drop-off points and proper one-way systems inside the school grounds. Councillor Muldowney, I think primarily the toolkit is aimed at officers at the moment, but I think that also that could be a shame because I think it is really good. So I'd like to definitely see it shared, if approved, shared with schools. I think that'd be, and the road safety team have got some really good sort of experience and links to the education in Thurrock and all the schools. So that would be my first point of call for them to engage with the schools. And then just going on to that for Council War, I think, yes, let's get it out there, put it on a new council newsletter on a Friday afternoon, put it on the socials. Let's say, you know, this is a piece of work, this is what we've done. We know it's not going to solve every single problem for everyone, but it's a step in the right direction and it will improve child safety, which is actually paramount. So thank you.
Thank you. Next is Councillor Hartstein.
Thank you, Leader. At the risk of repeating what everyone else has said already this evening, I should welcome the detailed report. So thank you very much. Thank you to you and all the committee, and also for the officers for drawing it all together. Obviously, like other people have said this evening, I think I can speak on behalf of all 49 councillors in the fact that we have all had residents come to us. And just on that note, I'm pleased to say that obviously we can all empathise with that, but I was pleased to see, certainly within my ward, the amount of responses that come forward. So that's actually pleasing to see the level of engagement from the residents. And just finally, just to say, I look forward to seeing the results of the pilot, and I'd be interested for the feedback on that. And obviously, as Cabinet Member for Education, if there's anything I can support with in terms of schoolwork and that, please just let me know. It'd be no problem at all. So thank you again.
Thank you. Councillor Hooper.
I too welcome this report, and I need to declare that I live opposite a primary school. Okay. And not every day is fun at peak time, so I'll just declare that straight away. I think I'll really welcome the report, but what I really want to see, what I'd love to see, and I don't know if we can encourage schools to actually put an action plan together for their particular school based on your really good toolkit. I'm really impressed by the toolkit. And then how do we monitor that? How do we monitor the outcomes that is better for our children's safety and our local community? I was also noted that a number of people drove to the schools because of the distance they live from their homes. I think it's on page 80. I think it was about the second highest reason why people drove to school. I feel saddened by that because schools ought to be part of local communities. If people are travelling to a school that's not actually in their community, I feel that that's disappointing, but I guess that's the academy model. The other thing I'll just make a note of is that I think in recent cabinet meetings we've been talking about local cycling and walk infrastructures, and hopefully that we can work with schools to develop those cycling and walk infrastructures to encourage children to actually cycle and walk to schools. Thank you.
Councillor Hooper, thank you. Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Chair. Personally, I think this report and the next report would come in is the best reports I've ever seen from a task and finish group, where it's actually got meaning. I've been on a few that it's gone nowhere. For me, though, there is Section 106 for some of these things that you can actually get done. And I think that's probably where we need to start exploring with the forums on how, in their area, they can help with that and unlock some of that, especially on the highways budget. In terms of the school travel plans, they should be kept up to date. And then, especially the new schools, when they come into planning, they should have a school travel plan with that. They don't tend to use it or enforce it. And that's, I think, where the problem comes from. So I just think it's a real good report, and I think it shouldn't be shut in a book and locked away. I think it's what Councillor Walsh said, we should get it out to the schools, have a conversation with schools, put it on our website and just scream about it, and then have an action plan next to it on what we're doing and what we're achieving from it. Thanks.
Councillor Watson, thank you. Fraser, is there anything you want to say by way of closing comments?
Thank you. Just want to say thank you, Councillor Hartstein. More than happy to any way I can help or sort of get this plan out there. I'm working alongside you, absolutely great. Councillor Hooper, yep, travel plans are so important. I think a lot of people as well were driving their child to school and then driving to work, and they didn't have time to be able to walk back and forth and still get to work on time, which I think is a real shame. But that's modern living, so it's hard. And yes, Section 106, we've got loads of it. We know that not being used in certain areas, and if it can be spent inside the wards that have been affected by that Section 106, yeah, I think that would be a tremendous thing to come out of this. And hopefully the schools can look at this and hopefully work on their travel plans if they haven't already got them, or look to update them as suggested. So thank you, colleagues.
Councillor Massey, thank you. And you know, it's probably my kind of OCD, but having a report that doesn't have a recommendation is just like a sentence without a full stop. So I'm going to kind of move a recommendation that isn't here, which is that we ask officers to bring a report back to a future cabinet meeting with an action plan that sets this, that makes this real and put some guidelines around it and actually means that we will see it rolled out. So I will say that again, going to move a recommendation that we ask officers to bring back an action plan based on this report. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Great, thank you. So we move on. Item 12 is the Childhood Obesity Task and Finish Group. Councillor Spate, do you wish to say anything?
Yes. The idea of, we had quite a lot of discussion about what we wanted to get from this Task and Finish Group. When the committee people, ONS, first convened, we looked at the objectives we wanted to get out of a calendar year and what was achievable and what would actually have some meaning. And Councillor Rigby stepped forward and I think has done an absolutely excellent job, because what it really is, we're not going to take an ounce of weight this calendar year or probably even the next one off a child in the borough. But what we have produced is, or what Liz has produced, is a really well-researched document that is a point of reference and a starting point going forwards. And it was interesting to just hear Councillor Muldowney talk about Fraser's report and said who it's written to. I think this is probably written for the executive, because you're the guys and girls who are going forward for the next 18 months, 2.5 years, to lay down some direction for this council. And I think this helps you do that if you want to look at areas that you can affect in the short to medium term to improve the health of people in the borough. And I'm sure Liz will go into that in a little bit more detail. The one thing I would say is it does come with the caveat, and I think after the informal briefing that you had from Liz a while ago, one of the comments made to me by one of the cabinet was, that's really good stuff, but who's going to pay for it all? And there is an element of cost to most of the things in there. I do think there's a real opportunity for Section 106 money to come into play. But I say I'll leave the rest really to Liz to just to go through. But I'm very proud of what she's achieved. I think it did exactly what it said on the tin in terms of an end output. It would be inopportune of me not to thank everybody who was on that committee, particularly Liz and also Claire Dixon, the officer and Democratic Services, who I know worked very, very, very hard. So yeah, I am very pleased with what we've achieved, but I'm more optimistic that, or I'm more hopeful that what this has achieved can actually be put into practice going forward.
Councillor Rigby.
Thank you. The Childhood Obesity Task and Finish Group was established by the People ONS Committee in response to the high rates of obesity in Thurrock. The report was presented to the committee on the 30th of January this year, and its findings are being incorporated into a new Thurrock Healthy Weight strategy. During the 10 weeks of the group's work, a wide range of stakeholders were engaged and visits undertaken to find causes and seek recommendations to halt the upward trend, level and then reverse. Weight management is a complex issue. Multiple factors contribute, including socioeconomics, ethnicity and mental health. Early identification and intervention is vital. We want children to be at a healthy weight and active. Many components and services will contribute to achieving this outcome. Improved collaboration across the council and with external stakeholders, together with enhanced signposting of offerings, will increase resident awareness of what is in place currently, for example, Henry, which is health, exercise and nutrition in the really young, and emerging initiatives such as Sport England Place Expansion Programme. Building confidence and ease in buying and preparing healthy food, reducing the reliance on sugary, highly processed fast foods and takeaways, whilst also helping with dental care. Increasing the opportunities and lifting perceived barriers to exercise, which has long-term mental and physical health benefits. The recommendations, which we hope Cabinet will endorse, encompass a whole systems approach, which together can and will make a difference. Thank you.
Councillor Rigby, thank you, and thank you for the report. I think it's a really well-researched, good, competent piece of work, and I congratulate you on the work that's gone into it. Councillor Hooper.
First of all, I'd like to thank People's ONS Committee, Councillor Rigby, and members of the working group for the report. I think it's a really good report. And certainly the recommendations I'll be looking to take forward as much as we possibly can. It is changing or updating our healthy weight strategy, as you referred to. This will come to Health and Wellbeing Committee, I think probably in May. Though it's actually not on the agenda yet, I'm hoping therefore that we can actually bring it to Cabinet in June. So I really welcome this report. Obviously there's not everything in the recommendations we can actually action as a council. There are some things that we can only influence, we can't actually change. So, but I will be keen to work with partners to take up a number of the recommendations that you referred to in your report. So thank you very much.
Anybody else? No? Okay. Can I just say we have recommendations embedded within the report. We have 16 recommendations that we're asked to endorse. Can I just ask that we endorse them en bloc? But I'd again like to add a further recommendation, which is again that we ask officers to come back with an action plan that's fully costed based on those 16 recommendations. Councillor Rigby, does that meet your approval?
Yes, thank you.
So can I ask that we're all agreed? Agreed, thank you. And could I just say, and Councillor Watson's said it, I think, you know, we've had a new scrutiny system this year, which, you know, has had its ups and downs, but I do think it's produced two really, really good pieces of work that are kind of beyond anything that I've seen us produce. So, you know, thank you to everybody who's been involved in scrutiny, members and scrutiny officers who I think have really shown their worth. I'm going to move on. Item 13, which is the Q3 Corporate Performance Report, and I will invite Councillor Worrell to introduce her report.
There you go. You there? I'm pleased to present the second report of the Council's Performance Management and Assurance Framework covering the third quarter of the 24-25 financial year. As the Commissioners highlighted in their recently published report, this framework is a crucial part of the commitment to do things differently, but to do things better here in Thurrock. It demonstrates our continued focus on improving transparency, accountability and delivery of services for the residents of Thurrock. Following feedback from our first set of reporting in Q2, we have made a number of key improvements, including responding to comments from corporate overview and scrutiny. Services have continued to review the targets set and to ensure that they align with our expectations on behalf of the residents. We have established an internal officer board to provide a supportive challenge and to drive continuous improvement across all service areas. Scrutiny committees have identified additional areas for more in-depth analysis. As a result, we have seen a more detailed briefing on the recycling metric presented to place scrutiny, and officers are working towards a more outcome-focused approach for future reports. Across both our milestones and our metrics, we are largely on track or within tolerance. However, we acknowledge that a quarter of our metrics and a small percentage of our milestones are currently off track. The 14 red-rated metrics span all three priorities of our corporate plan and the full report. Appendix 1 provides a detailed breakdown of actions being taken by services to address these challenges. I have asked all Cabinet members to work closely with their service leads to review all areas of delivery and ensure that the targets continue to be appropriately challenging, neither too ambitious nor too lenient. While there is always more to do, we are confident that this report demonstrates an overall positive direction of travel in meeting the strategic objectives set out in our corporate plan. We will, of course, look at introducing new metrics as we progress. This will include appropriate areas of both devolution and local government reorganisation. I would like to thank the Scrutiny Committee for the work that they have completed on reviewing this document and going forwards, and we will continue to take all of their comments on board. Thank you.
Councillor Worrell, thank you. Councillor Holloway was first.
Just flagging one of the amber metrics in my portfolio, which is the residual waste per household kilos metric, which is lagging at the moment. And that the latest figures are yet to be fully calculated. That's why that is currently amber. The results for this period are expected to be confirmed later this month, so we expect that to actually turn to green when that's done. But to address overall waste reduction in Thurrock, we are working on a waste minimisation plan, which has been developed, setting out key actions to reduce the total waste generated by residents. And this initiative will be supported by a borough-wide communications and behavioural change programme, which is currently being developed, and it will focus on encouraging residents to reduce their waste and increase their recycling and promote sustainable behaviours.
Thank you. Councillor Morris-Cook.
Yes, thank you. If I look at mine, obviously there is a couple of ambers there, and it just gives me another opportunity really to talk about communities in action that we are going to be taking to Cabinet in July. There has been a slight delay with this, but for the right reasons. We really needed to go back and sense check some information because, as we've said previously, when we're talking about local government, it's no important to be a tick box. You need to do things correctly. So I'm pleased to say that that will be going to Cabinet in July. And one of the other ones for me is when we've had the Ask the Council events, which we've now had two. The first one having a greater audience and the second one. But I do believe these are important. I do believe we learn a lot from each of them. I do think the second one became more of a surgery, a councillor's surgery. And I think if that is something that people really want to do, we could look at doing that for 20 minutes afterwards where people could raise individual issues with people, relevant directors or portfolio holders either before or after. But I think it was really good. I think there was some very good debate in both of them. And, you know, it is a way that we've said we want to go back out into the community. I know our next one will be in Tilbury. And we want to go out to the community. We want to try and build some trust and to show that we are there and happy to be accountable. So I'm very proud on what we're doing. I do think there's improvements, but hey-ho, that's what we should be looking for, continuous improvement.
Councillor Hartstein.
Thank you, Leader. Obviously, there's the odd red and some of them, the direction of travel's coming down in some of them. But I just wanted to highlight page 205, looking at the initial health assessments, because I know it's something that all of us as corporate parents have sort of been on top of for a while and have really quite concerned many years. I just wanted to report, Councillor Worrell, that at corporate parenting last week, the ICB came along and they shared with us that in February they had undertaken 100% of the initial health assessments in time, and they reported back that they had a 70% rate over the last 3 months. So obviously I'll be keeping a close eye on that, but in terms of the direction of travel, obviously we're looking for 80%, but if we can certainly sustain the direction of travel that we're moving in at the moment, it's definitely positive news. So I just wanted to report that one back to you.
Thank you. Councillor Muldowney.
Thank you, Chair. So a number of things are happening. So while Dawn's been away, I've taken the opportunity to work a bit more closely with other members of staff in my portfolio. So I've been working with Liz Haynes on the indicators about the performance management framework. First of all, I want to say it's a very useful document. It's really helpful to keep us on track with what the priorities are and to guide the work that we're doing with our officers and to steer that process so that we make sure that we're achieving on our goals. So the workforce performance management framework is starting to take shape, and this is where we take that golden thread from the corporate plan and through the PMAF and actually bring it down to individual staff members' goals and performance. So this is the way, you know, we make sure that all of those documents are actually living, breathing documents and are having an impact actually on the office floor. So happy with all of that that's happening. Obviously, I have some red indicators. One of those is agency staff. I will be honest, you know, despite sort of quite extensive recruitment campaigns, we do have a challenge with recruitment. So this is one of the things that's feeding into that indicator. And obviously since local government reorganisation came into the picture, that is also having a dampening effect on recruitment activities. So I am working with Liz on that to see how we can work with that most usefully to control costs as much as possible. Going to audit and risk management. So we were making very good progress in both of these areas. Unfortunately, because of a staff departure, we did stall, I would say. That's true to say. But we did try and recruit to this post. This is one of the posts that we just couldn't find a good candidate for, but we have managed to secure a very good interim. So just to reassure other cabinet members, you know, the interim's actually written our corporate risk register very quickly, produced a draft audit plan, a 3-year audit plan. So just to reassure members that progress is again being made in those areas. And another good quality of this interim is actually that he can deliver training, because he's going to need extensive training across the organisation, and we're planning more training for members. I do just want to say there that I was very disappointed that only 17 members actually attended the risk management training, given that it's such an important part of our recovery journey that we learn to identify and manage and properly manage risk. So we are looking to put on further member training, and because of the resource that we've got now, we will be able to make that bespoke to Thurrock, and I think that's going to be a really good benefit for us, and really bespoke for members here to give members the information that they need to gain assurance for themselves that we are managing risks properly now. in all areas of work. So, yeah, asset disposals, that's also a place. Well, the overall number of that remains the same, but we've actually reprofiled it so that it goes over across several years. So even though that's red, there is actually no change to the overall outcome. Now, I think I've probably covered everything I wanted to. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Leader. So my res is on planning. So what's happening on planning at the moment is that some of the planning applications are exceeding the 8 weeks for minor and the 13 weeks for the major. This is due to the complexity of that actual planning application. So it could be a design, it could be a standard. But what we've been doing, as well as working at pace to clear the backlog that was historically, and that was recognised in the past review, we're actually now having conversations with developers and applicants in order to find a way forward and to sort of help them steer themselves through the process. So that seemed to be working really well, and that's why when after the extension of time that has been agreed with every applicant, then it's going through a lot more easier. So we're going to continue that, Councillor Worrell, to try and get on top of that, because obviously it's not good enough and it needs to be ramped up a little bit as well. The other thing that I've got an amber on, and I just wanted to bring it in, is the place strategy. So the place strategy is currently in draft and is continuing to be drafted. Once that is being continued, obviously it will go into ONS place like to go through it, and then it will come onto Cabinet at a later date. But rest assured, it is in being drafted as we speak. Thanks.
Thank you. If there's nobody else, if I haven't missed anybody, Councillor Hooper.
Oh, well, I guess I better say something about my red, which is on housing, and really relates to tenants being satisfied and feeling safe. Now, I know that the officers are doing a lot of work on this at the moment to try and improve that, and there's regular meetings to actually look at how we can have better interaction with our tenants and getting better feedback from them. So it's something actually being really focused on by officers at the moment. And I will be attending some of those meetings, not all of them, to get a proper update and politely challenge officers on the progress they're actually making. So I'm just saying it is alive, so it's not forgotten.
Thank you. Councillor Worrell, would you like to sum up and move the recommendations?
Yeah, thanks, Leader, and thank you for each and every one of you for your input and for really taking to heart, you know, the use of PMAP, you know, because it's an amazing document, and it's really growing and it's live, and that's what I like. It's you know, it's something that we'll be using for the foreseeable. And commissioners are keen for us to use it, and for us to use it to send work to scrutiny as well. So if there is an area that is red and you know you think that there is a piece of work for scrutiny to help you, that's the role of Cabinet, is to send work to scrutiny to look at something for you. So please consider that going forward, because you know, I think that this is it's much better than the old boxes that we used to use, and it was the same indicators. So so well done for each and every one of you for staying on top of it, really picking up, working with your officers, and there'll be an annual report from performance, but there'll also be the opportunity for you to now be having those conversations with your heads of to talk about if there's new indicators that should be added, or if there's something that you think things will come and go off of the performance. So consider whether there's stuff that we are measuring that maybe we shouldn't be measuring. And hopefully going forwards into the new municipal year, we will be having quarterly meetings as a Cabinet to look at PMAF, so that we do stay on top of Thurrock's journey out of intervention through into whatever's next for us. So I think that this will grow and it will become more and more important. And I know that scrutiny really do look at this I went to the corporate meeting last night, and they had quite a conversation, and they are reading it and they are studying it, and they've made some more recommendations for what they want to see come out of PMAT. So thank you for the work that you are doing, for the work that the officers are doing. So I will go to the recommendations, and they can be found on page 178, and at point 2, for the reasons set out in the report, the Cabinet is recommended to note the quarterly performance update report and progress made up to the end of the third quarter of 24-25 in delivering the Year 1 priority milestones and metrics of the corporate plan. Agreed. And 2.2, consider recommending any areas of concern within the remits of the corporate place an overview and scrutiny committees to the chairs of those respective committees.
We agreed. Thank you. Moving on to item 14, Thurrock Council's Improvement and Recovery, the second report, and I will again ask Councillor Worrell to introduce.
Thank you, Chair. And this is my second report of the evening. And I'm pleased to introduce the second report on our improvement and recovery outcomes and success criteria covering the period up to the end of December. This report is part of our ongoing commitment and transparency and to ensuring that we continue to demonstrate progress in our recovery journey through and out of intervention. Together with the performance report we have just discussed, this document forms part of our assessment of the impact we are having and the improvements we are embedding. The details in Appendix 1 highlight key developments since the first report. I'm pleased to say that the report that there are a number of success criteria previously rated as amber that have now progressed to green. The completion of the annual government statements strengthened our oversight of our companies and partnerships and continued focus on collective accountability for our finances. However, there is one area that has moved from green to amber, and that is our commitment to conducting regular corporate peer challenges and other external assessments. I want to make it absolutely clear that this does not indicate any reduction in our commitment. Rather, it reflects the need for further planning and consideration, particularly in light of the ongoing discussions around local government reorganisation, which we have discussed as a wider council as part of this meeting tonight. Looking ahead, we will also be considering how best to support the Commissioners in their best value assessment of the Council as requested by the Minister of State. It is important to acknowledge that while we have made significant progress since the start of intervention, there is still so much more that we need to do. We remain steadfast in our commitment to embedding the improvements we have made and ensuring that the progress achieved so far is sustained in the long term.
Councillor Worrell, thank you. I'll open up to questions and comments. No, this is one of those that will come back to Council, so we'll be able to have a full debate at Council. So with that, Councillor Worrell, if you want to move the recommendations.
Yep. The recommendations can be found on page 225, and for the at point 2, for the reasons set out in this report, the Cabinet is recommended to 2.1, note the progress made on the Council's improvement and recovery.
Are we agreed?
And refer this report to full Council for consideration of all members.
Again, are we agreed? Thank you. We move on to item 15, waste policy, and I will invite Councillor Holloway to introduce her report.
Thank you, Leader. The waste and recycling collection policy brings together various existing documents and frameworks into a single comprehensive guide that aligns with Thurrock Council's 2021 to 2031 municipal waste strategy. It reflects our ongoing commitment to improve service delivery, supporting environmental sustainability and ensuring compliance with relevant legislation such as the Environment Act 2021 and the new simpler recycling legislation. Although this is not a completely new policy, there are two key additions to flag. The first is a formal documented mist collection policy. While mist collections have been addressed operationally, this is the first time our approach has been formally documented to ensure consistency, transparency and clear communication with residents. And the policy is that we'll be collecting missed bins within 2 collection days. The second is a waiver requirement for private or unadopted roads. This policy introduces a requirement for landowners to sign a waiver granting the council permission to collect waste from private or unadopted roads. This measure reduces legal and financial risks while clarifying responsibilities for both parties. The policy is designed to enhance operational efficiency, increase recycling rates, and help us meet our target of a 50% recycling rate by 2030. By standardising service delivery and promoting clearer guidance for residents, it represents a significant step towards achieving our long-term environmental objectives while remaining adaptable to evolving regulations.
Councillor Holloway, thank you. Who was first? Councillor Muldowney, then Councillor Watson, then Councillor Morris-Cook.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say that I'm really delighted that we've got a missed bin policy, because I mean, you know, it's the service that every resident sort of has, really. So I mean, certainly in Chadwell, it's the one that I get the most complaints about, and occasionally some thank yous because we've sorted things out. But I think this will make a big difference, especially now we're on 2 weekly collections. If your bin's missed and you've got to wait a whole month before it's collected, it's, you know, not many families or households can actually sustain that. So I'm absolutely delighted that that's in there. I'm glad that we were the ones to do that. And I think it will generate a lot of goodwill with residents, that we've got a clear policy about coming back and emptying their bins within 2 days. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Watson.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Holloway. I echo that. I really think it's a really good idea that it's now transparent and on the website so that everybody could see. I just think, for me, one of the things I just wanted to ask is about the waiver for collections on private and unadopted road. Is that going to be online where those individuals can actually apply for the waiver, or are we going to actually go out knowing where they are and putting that through the doors and saying you need a waiver? And is it also a chargeable waiver, or is it free?
Councillor Holloway. Okay, we will. That is a level of detail that we will circulate after the meeting. Okay, in the meantime, Councillor Morris-Cook.
Thank you. I do think it's a really good report. I think it's very well written. I think it's easy to understand. I think it's very comprehensive. Just a couple of points for me. Can we please be mindful of commercial businesses that are running out of our village halls or our community centres? Because some of them are covered by charitable status, the community halls, but there are commercial opportunity and commercial businesses that should be paying the trade waste and not relying on them having a charity status and then getting something that perhaps another commercial business wouldn't have, that opportunity of having it collected for nothing. So I do think it's really important that we just make sure that we're really mindful of that. There are more and more commercial businesses being run out of our village halls and our community centres at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Crick, are you going to respond? Mr.
On the second point, whether the waivers are chargeable, no, they're free. There'll be no charge applied. Normally, private unadopted roads will be able to identify through the crews will let us know where they are, and then waivers, obviously, we can we'll find the landowners, and the waivers will go to them, obviously, to be signed off. But that's how we normally would find the unadopted roads. There's also a database, obviously, that we can council database that we can use.
Okay. Councillor Watson, do you want to respond to that? Oh, okay. In which case, Councillor Holloway, I will invite you to move the recommendations.
Thank you, Leader. I appreciate the positive feedback on this report. And I would say just on the element of Councillor Modoni, your point on missed bins, I think we would never leave it for a month. Hopefully that would be an extraordinary exception. I do think that the teams have always usually tried to collect them very, very quickly. But as you say, it's nice to get that formalised. But yeah, the teams have always tried to get those dealt with. And on trade waste, Councillor Morris-Cook, you're absolutely right. And there are specific members of the team that are looking at our trade waste and commercial side of it to ensure that we're getting, you know, the most bang for our buck there with those services too. So thank you so much. On that, I will move the recommendations 2.1 to consider the waste and recycling policy attached to this report and comment upon the content, and if satisfied, recommend it be included in Thurrock Council's policy framework.
Are we all agreed? Agreed. Thank you.
And 2.2, review and agree the 2 additional sections, missed collections and collections from private and unadopted roads, not specifically covered in the existing policy, and agree policies and documents.
And again, are we agreed? Thank you. I should have said, for me, even with a fortnightly collection, this authority still, with food caddies, collects over 6 million bins a year. The fact that 1 or 2 bins do get missed is absolutely inevitable. It strikes me as a remarkably low number that are missed against that kind of whatever it is, 6.25, 6.5 million bins that are collected. But it's really good to see that we're now codifying what residents' rights are when a bin is missed. I'm going to move on. Item 16 is the Integrated Transport Block, the ITB, and the Maintenance Capital Programme for 25-26. And I'll again ask Councillor Holloway to introduce.
Thank you, Leader. The report sets out the annual programme for all highways works, transport delivery and maintenance. The funding consists of 979,000 for integrated transport programme, 3,819,000 for maintenance block. This is an annual allocation from the Department of Transport to target the maintenance of our bridges, street lighting, carriageways, footways, drainage, lining and marking, traffic signals, and our improvement works, including walking and cycling. We've used feedback from members and changed our approach to transport delivery schemes to ensure all schemes are delivered in a more timely way. Whilst we are seeking approval for the programme, we will be following established processes to ensure members and residents are consulted throughout the development and implementation of the schemes.
Councillor Holloway, thank you. I will open up for questions or comments. Councillor Muldowney.
Thank you, Chair. Recently, I've been discussing a lot with, I've been discussing roads a lot with residents. Lots of residents report that some of the work that is done, and I think they're referring to jet patching work, it doesn't last. So I just wanted to ask for some reassurance that the programmes that we're going to be bringing forward, you know, are going to do repairs to the road that are going to last. I mean, I'm sure that must save money in the long run. But certainly what I'm getting from residents is that, you know, the jet patching, okay, it may be appropriate in some areas, but it's like something that needs to be done again and again and again. In a few months' time, it will need to be done again, and they want to see like some proper road repairs.
Any further contributions? No? In which case I will ask Councillor Holloway to sum up and move the recommendations.
Yeah, I appreciate that reflection, Councillor Muldowney, and I think it's similar across the borough where people want to see perfect roads. I do wish that the budget allowed to resurface all the roads instead of providing a patch, and there is a detailed set of criteria when deciding what patch is kind of carried out and where resurfacing is done. But I will definitely take your comments and reflect those back to the team. I would love to see, as I said, a lot of resurfacing, but unfortunately we're not able to do that with the budget constraints. And I know that keeping to budgets are very important to you, so I'm going to follow your rules. With that in mind, I will move recommendation 2.1, the approval of the prioritisation and programme utilising the annual capital funding allocation from the Department for Transport This funding is allocated to enable Thurrock Council to deliver identified policy improvements, infrastructure and service provision within Thurrock in the 2025-26 financial year.
Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Okay, before we move on to item 17, I would like to move a motion without notice to suspend the Council Procedure Rule 11.1 to allow the meeting to continue beyond the 2.5-hour time limit. I don't believe it should be necessary to do that for any more than 10 minutes. So if everybody can be mindful of that, the meeting will close no later than 21:40. So we move on to item 17, which is the Q3 Revenue and Capital Report, and I will invite Councillor Muldowney to introduce her report.
Thank you, Chair. I will keep it brief. The Q3 Revenue and Capital Report presents a significant improvement in the Council's financial position, demonstrating reduced overspending and strong budgetary control. So the headline figure is that, as we indicated in Q2, that our projected overspend has now reduced overall to £157,000. We have high confidence that we will come in, and we fully intend to come in within budget by the end of the year, and I think we can see from the figures now that will be the case. I don't want to go too deep into it. Work continues sort of on all our financial plans. Deep dives continue. I do want to do more work, as does our Section 151 officer and other finance officers, on the capital programme. I think we do need to dive deeper into that, particularly the programme that we inherited, and make sure that all the projects on there are truly viable. So that work will be ongoing throughout the year. That's it.
Thank you. I would just say that the backdrop against which we are working is incredibly tough. We've said since the very first cabinet meeting of the year that it is absolutely essential that we bring the budget in online. Failure to do that was just not an alternative, and I'm pleased that, as the year's gone on, what looked to be a really tough ask in Q1 has inevitably kind of plateaued off as we've taken measures to bring spending under control, to introduce new savings, new measures. So I think it's a significant achievement that we will be bringing the budget in online, and hopefully with a small surplus, and we shouldn't underestimate the kind of achievement that is. Any further questions or comments? No? Okay. Councillor Muldowney, if you'd like to move the recommendations.
Thank you. To note and comment on the Council's operating budget and forecast overspend position as at Q3 of 0.991 million, representing a reduction of 1.731 million on the position presented at Q2.
Is that agreed?
Thank you. To note and comment on the Council's overall position and forecast overspend position at Q3 of 0.157 million, representing a reduction of 1.739 million on the position presented at Q2.
Is that agreed? Thank you.
To note and comment on the projected use of reserves at Q3 as presented in section 4.14 and appendices 1 and 2 of this report.
Is that agreed?
And 2.4, to note and comment on the progress made on delivery against the savings target for 24-25.
Is that agreed?
To note and comment on the anticipated slippage of the General Fund Capital Programme of 7.123 million and expected 5.5 million release of funding on the HRA Capital Programme.
And once again, are we agreed? Thank you. So we move on to item 18, which is the South East Local Enterprise Partnership Accountable Body Transitional Arrangements. And I'll invite Councillor Watson to introduce her report.
Thank you, Leader. So in April 2024, the government withdrew its support for the LEPs across the UK. FELEP which Thurrock is part of, was made up from Essex County Council, Essex-Sussex County Council, Kent County Council, Southend-on-Sea and Medway. The report focuses on the CLAP accountability body and provides update on the transitional arrangements that have to be put in place. It seeks our approval to enter into a proposed transition arrangement which would establish a joint committee responsible for overseeing the CLAP for us, Southend and Essex County Council. It's for their legacy programmes. This arrangement is critical in ensuring that no valuable funding is lost on any ongoing projects which was originally supported through the CLAP, and that can continue to deliver the benefits to our community. By securing this transitional agreement, we will ensure that any remaining CLAP revenue and capital funding is properly allocated and released to us from Essex County Council, who was CLAP's overall accountable body. This is a crucial step in mitigating the potential negative impacts of withdrawal of LEP funding, safeguarding investments in our local economy and ensuring that key projects are not abandoned. I'm seeking your authorisation to enter into this. Thank you.
Councillor Watson, thank you. I will open for questions or comments. If there are none, this is really important that this is done in a competent way so that there's no gap in the funding, that projects can continue. And I think we've set out very clearly how we're going to achieve that. If there are no questions or comments, I will invite you to move the recommendations.
Thank you. Recommendation. For the reasons set out in this report, the Cabinet is recommended to 2.1. Agree that Thurrock Council enters an interim transition arrangement as described in Appendix 1 and paragraph 4.11 to 4.13 of this report for CLAP to ensure the continuity and completion of the agreed CLAP legacy schemes ahead of the formation of a joint committee partnership board.
Is that agreed? Thank you.
2.2. Delegate completion of the final transition agreement to the Executive Director of Place in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Good Growth, Executive Director of Corporate Resources and Monitoring Officer and Chief Financial Officer.
Is that agreed?
Delegate agreement and completion of any other interim agreements required for decision-making regarding legacy agreements as set out in paragraph 4.16 ahead of the formation of the Joint Committee Partnership Board to the Executive Director of Place in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Good Growth, Executive Director of Corporate Resources and Monitoring Officer and Chief Financial Officer.
And once again, is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. So we move on to item 21, the final item of the evening, Asset Disposal Report. Before I invite Councillor Muldowney to introduce a report, can I just remind everybody that this report has 2 exempt appendices, so I'll just ask members and officers not to discuss the contents of those appendices in open session. If members would like to discuss those appendices, we'll need to go into closed session and ask the public to leave and to pause the recording. That having been said, I'll invite Councillor Muldowney to introduce the report.
Obviously, all Cabinet members are aware that part of the government directions means that we have an asset disposal programme. This report seeks Cabinet approval for 1 property asset to be placed on the market and sold in line with the improvement and recovery plan. And to dispose of the asset known as land at Warren Lane in Grays.
Thank you. I'll open for questions and comments. Nothing? In which case, Councillor Muldowney, I will invite you to move the recommendations.
Thank you. For the reasons set out in this report, the Cabinet is recommended to dispose of the asset known as land at Warren Lane in Grays.
Is that agreed?
And in respect of the land at Warren Lane in Grays, delegate authority to agree the terms of disposal to the Chief Financial Officer, Section 151, in consultation with the leader.
And again, is that agreed? Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
That brings us to the end of this evening's meeting, so I declare the meeting closed at 21:29. Thank you.